There is no internal skeleton. One of the key things that has happened in cephalopod evolution is they've gotten rid of their shells, they've gotten rid of their skeletons entirely to increase their flexibility and to allow greater expansion of the body wall, because the way they travel is by two mechanisms. One is flapping those fins elegantly, beautifully, but the other is jet propulsion. And so they become a great big hydrodynamic chamber that can suck in bodies of water, squirt it out through a siphon, and propel it at rapid speed through the water. So this is another alternative solution to organisms living in the ocean. So what that tells us is right away, fishoids are not necessarily interplanetary universals, but let's not go the other way and suggest that squidoids are either. The answer is that nature is always going to surprise us with novel solutions. And working backwards to make a Panglossian rationalization that every solution represents the best of all possible solutions is a fallacy. So again, why does squid look so different from fish? It's the body plan. I didn't show you a cephalopod's body plan earlier, but here it is. This is the core function. This is the way you organize a cephalopod is in the early embryo, and what's shown here are the three extant divisions of the major cephalopod groups. And what they all are is a visceral bag on top. So a little bag of guts with a shell gland on top, and dangling down from it are stubby little muscular appendages. And that's what evolution's working material is. That's what it had to shape in order to produce the streamlined squid that we see nowadays. Why does it work this way? Well, I think this is the Pinewood Derby problem, okay? All of you who are former Cub Scouts, you remember this, right? There's this project Cub Scouts always do. You're handed this little rectangular block of wood, and you're handed 4 plastic wheels, and there's a bunch of miscellaneous fasteners and so forth. And they tell you, take this away and make a racer that's going to go down this track. And there's rules. You know, you're not allowed to just go out and get any arbitrary stuff and bring it in there. There's rules about weight, etc. So this is your starting material. This is the primordial body plan, is a little rectangular block of wood. And when you go to see the Pinewood Derby, what you find is that everyone builds cars. They all look different from one another. But the differences are primarily in the details. And usually, fundamentally, they are the block of wood with 4 wheels nailed on to do the race down the track. So everyone comes up with similar solutions, but the details can be creative and inventive. But what if instead, I'd like to suggest this to any of you scout leaders out there, what if instead the Cub Scouts were handed a big lump of putty, some ball bearings, and a dozen balloons and told to do the same thing? You'd get different results, I bet. What if it were instead a bucket of plastic straws, some plaster of Paris, and a gerbil? Starting materials make all the difference. You will produce different results depending on how you start out. So different starting conditions, very different solutions will emerge. So that's one source of the variety that we're going to see in any aliens, is they are starting from a very different stock. They're starting with the gerbils and plastic straws, whereas we're sitting here with a block of wood and think, oh, the only way this is going to work is this particular way. Now, I have to say a few words about intelligence. And that is, you know, this is what we expect of our, we don't expect stupid aliens to land, right? They build a spaceship. They better have some smarts behind them. But the thing is, intelligence doesn't seem to be a very likely solution to evolutionary problems. It's peculiar and odd and difficult. It's kind of like a wacky Pinewood Derby car, and you made it by instead balancing the block of wood on its end and using a single wheel and turning it into a unicycle, and it works. Maybe there's some design that would work that way, and it's really weird. It's probably not going to win any races, unless it gets highly refined and does some interesting things. But that's kind of what intelligence is. It's the improbable arrangement of parts that we have that makes us a little bit unique and a little bit unusual. Now, this is a diagram of the history of Earth from a biological perspective. And what it illustrates, this is just a timeline with the width of the line illustrating the rough number of different forms of animals present on the planet. And what it illustrates is that life thrives for long periods of tens to hundreds of millions of years, and then 5 times in the past 500 million years, there have been abrupt mass extinctions. huge catastrophic events in geologically short intervals in which, for instance, 90 to 99% of all species were abruptly wiped out. We're in the beginnings of one of these right now, in case you're interested. This is the 6th extinction going on, where we're seeing a massive die-off of many different species, which we should be worried about. The best known of these extinctions is the Cretaceous extinction 65 million years ago, which exterminated the dinosaurs. And the biggest was the Permian extinction 250 million years ago that simply devastated the planet. Each of these was like a big game over moment, a reset that wiped the slate mostly clean and then resumed play. So we can think of this as 6 related but alien worlds. We have a sample size of roughly 6 right now on this planet, of 6 different solutions to worldwide ecologies. Now, to be fair, since we're thinking about intelligent life, let's exclude the first 2. The first 2, animal life is primarily aquatic, so maybe it's fair to say that they didn't have a chance to invent fire. Okay. But these later 4, they all had large, complex terrestrial animals in complex environments. And only now in the Quaternary have we had the evolution of intelligent tool-using forms. So out of 4 tries, we got 1. 25%, okay. Of course, even there, what we've seen is that once tool-using intelligence emerges, it can expand rather quickly. We hominids evolved like lightning over a few million years. Yet, Troodon didn't do it. No other terrestrial animals have done it quite like we have at any time in the last 400 million years. So intelligence is not a ubiquitous adaptation. It's not like fangs or claws or wings or eyes, features that pop up independently in multiple lineages. It's a great rarity. And we can't even judge whether on a geological scale it's even a long-term evolutionary success. We've had agriculture for only a few thousand years, industrial technologies for only a few hundred, and we can already see some major obstacles to our survival looming on the horizon. And maybe we should also recognize that intelligence doesn't seem to be one kind of thing either. So here are representatives of 4 groups of animals that show great potential for intelligence. They're self-aware, puzzle-solving, curious, and exploring creatures. They're the primates, some birds like Steller's jays, which I've illustrated here, cetaceans, and cephalopods, at least a few cephalopods, like the octopus. Now, science fiction stories love to speculate about meeting and communicating with aliens, but they always cheat and make the aliens mirrors of ourselves, so it's relatively easy. Here are 4 species that are far more closely related to us than any possible alien on another planet, that share far more in common with us than any aliens we might ever encounter. Yet we're trying harder to listen to conversations of unknown aliens with SETI than we are trying to have a chat with our next-door neighbor, Octopus vulgaris. I suggest to you that extraterrestrial aliens are not impossible, but they may be rarer than you think, and furthermore, that they're going to be weirder than you can imagine. And if you can't think of what to say to an earthbound intelligent mollusk, you're going to have a really tough time with biochemically bizarre, anatomically improbable, historically unrelated tentacled blobs of fomalhaut or whatever. Okay, so to summarize, these are some general principles of biology that will universally apply. Evolution doesn't just make finely tuned functional organisms, but it is also built on a foundation of chance, so it spawns endless diversity. Do not underestimate the engine of inventiveness that is evolution. Every advance also carries along the baggage of its ancestry, so we see echoes of our past in every single feature we've got. And the more specific and complex a feature is, and intelligence is definitely both of those, the less likely it is to emerge in the same form in different lineages. Okay, how much time left? We're done. Okay. George is ready to tell you about alien sex. Thank you.
P.C. Myers, ladies and gentlemen, P.C. Myers.